remarks, I too would like to welcome our newest committee member, Jake Elsey. I would be remiss as an Oklahoman if I didn't note he comes from our neighboring state to the south. And I would also observe my late maternal grandfather, who was born on a cotton farm outside of Corsicana, Texas, used to refer to it as the Republic of Texas, Jake. So if I use that phraseology, understand that's a positive, affectionate note, even though some of your fellow Texans may roll their eyes, and nonetheless. And with Jake on board, he brings an impressive amount of experience in the military, business, commercial aviation, and I'm looking forward to working with him. And I think, Jake, you will enjoy the Science Committee. It is, if there's anything left that is such a thing as a fun committee, Science, Space, and Technology is that committee. Now, that said, again, thank you, Chairwoman Johnson. And I won't deny, I am disappointed that we're here today for today's markup because of what I fear is poor, politically driven decisions by Democratic leadership, forcing through a $3.5 trillion partisan reconciliation spending package is nothing short of reckless and irresponsible. This exercise isn't about making smart policy decisions to better serve the American people. It's about using gimmicks to dramatically increase the size and scope of the federal government, using only the slimmest of possible voting margins. To create a false sense of urgency, the Democratic leadership is pressing for quick action on this. Why do that when we have real deadlines facing us and a congressional responsibility to act? Government funding expires in 3 weeks, and without an agreement, we could be facing a government shutdown. We're also in danger of breaching our debt ceiling and defaulting on our legal obligations. Meanwhile, $1 trillion in COVID relief funds is sitting unspent, and Americans are paying for Washington's actions with higher prices at the gas pump, at the grocery store, and just about everywhere else. Energy costs alone have increased by 24% since last summer. As inflation rises, Americans have to stretch every dollar further and further. But instead of addressing this very real problem, Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer, Senator Sanders are just pushing for more government spending. The Sanders budget plan directs the Science Committee to spend $45.5 billion in the committee's jurisdiction. There are some priorities in this bill I support, priorities which we have worked together on over the past few years. But this isn't the right way to fund those priorities. These aren't thoughtful investments designed to significantly improve American research and development. We're throwing money at agencies with almost no direction on how it is to be spent. We're advocating our responsibilities as legislators and handing over our decisions to unelected bureaucrats. And this isn't free money. It comes with a cost that our children and grandchildren will have to pay. We're borrowing from their future and making it harder for them to invest in the challenges they'll face. Worse, we're doing so recklessly. What happens in 5 years when the massive infusion of cash dries up? It creates a funding cliff that prevents us from making sustainable and strategic investments. That doesn't just impact our research itself when we hit the funding cliff, but scientists and researchers will find themselves out of work, further damaging our STEM pipeline. Aside from the reckless nature of the spending, I have some significant concerns with the way the money is allocated within this legislation. At a time when energy costs are skyrocketing, it's troubling that this bill rejects an all-of-the-above approach to energy research and instead focuses almost entirely on renewables. Families are paying more to heat and cool their homes, and businesses are paying more to manufacture and distribute their goods. That makes it very difficult for the United States to stay globally competitive. Why then does this bill ignore research into affordable, clean, and reliable fuel sources like natural gas and nuclear energy? We'll not be able to address climate change unless we take a comprehensive approach to developing new energy technologies, and anything short of that is just political virtue signaling. I'm also concerned that within these tens of billions of dollars, no money was allocated for bipartisan committee priorities like human space exploration and restarting the research halted by COVID. It's a sign of how disordered this bill is. I'm especially disappointed because I believe this bill undercuts the important work we've done to develop legislation to improve American research and development. We've passed 3 overwhelmingly bipartisan bills: the National Science Foundation for the Future Act, the DOE Science for the Future Act, and the NEST for the Future Act, which invest a total of $135 billion over 5 years across our most critical federal research agencies. I'm proud of our work on those bills, and I appreciate all that Chairwoman Johnson and my friends across the aisle did to develop them. That's why it's so troubling that this reconciliation package undermines our bipartisan efforts. Provisions in this package will make it harder to negotiate the House competitiveness package with the Senate. We'll throw away our deliberative, strategic approach in favor of this one-time spending spree. The legislation before us today isn't about funding science. If it were, we would be doing so through smart policies. This is about spending for the sake of spending. It's bad policy, and while I hope we can pass some amendments to improve it, I'm opposed to passing it through this committee. And I would conclude with 2 final thoughts. Number 1, my affection for the chairman of this committee and my respect for her legislative skills will only be increased as we continue to work through the coming days. But once the committee does what it has to do today, I hope we can get back to our record of doing the things that we need to do as a committee. With that, Madam Chair, I yield back, and I look forward to the discussion for the rest of the day.